The battlefield burned under the dying light of the twin suns as the warrior queen Erelindra stepped onto the shattered ridge with a crimson blade humming like a furious heartbeat, while the fallen armada swarmed across the horizon in endless black waves that devoured every trace of hope. Erelindra raised the blade high and shouted a vow to the stars, promising that she would not let her people fall, and that even if the sky itself collapsed, she would remain standing until the last breath of the last enemy faded into the dust of forgotten galaxies. The ground cracked beneath her armored boots as ancient runes awakened, responding to her royal blood, and releasing a burst of radiant power that surged through the mountains and ignited the old defenses once built by ancestors who had fought their own impossible wars. The Fallen Armada advanced with monstrous war machines shaped like metallic beasts whose roars echoed through the canyons, making even the bravest warriors tremble. Yet Erelindra walked forward with calm fury because fear had no authority over a queen forged by hardship. Her generals gathered around her and begged her to retreat to the inner citadel where she would be safe. But Erelindra refused because a queen who hides behind walls does not deserve a crown, and she would rather die leading her warriors than survive as a shadow of herself. The sky darkened as the Armada's flagship emerged, a colossal vessel shaped like a floating fortress with glowing blue veins pulsing across its surface and releasing thunderous energy that shook the atmosphere itself, but Erelindra stood unmoving as if daring it to descend. She activated the royal beacon, sending a wave of fiery gold light across the plains, which summoned every surviving battalion from the outer cliffs to the deep trenches and the northern skyholds until thousands of loyal fighters assembled behind her ready to face death with unshakable purpose. Erelindra addressed the soldiers, telling them that victory would not be granted by destiny but carved by their own hands, and that today they would either liberate their world or fall in such a way that legends would be forced to remember their name for eternity. The warriors roared in fierce unity, and the sound rolled across the land like a storm, lifting the spirits of those who still believed that the warrior queen was a final shield standing between life and annihilation. Erelindra breathed deeply and allowed the ancient core within her armor to synchronize with her heartbeat, releasing powerful currents of starfire energy that wrapped around a blade, turning it into a blazing pillar that lit the ridge with unstoppable radiance. The Fallen Armada unleashed their first strike, blasting the ridge with a torrent of shadow energy that tore through stone like paper, but Erelindra leaped forward with supernatural speed, slicing through the darkness with a starfire blade and splitting the attack into harmless spirals of light. Her warriors surged forward behind her, forming a living storm as they clashed with the Armada's mechanical legion, whose cold metal claws struck with deadly precision, but Erelindra cut them down one after another like a raging comet, destroying anything that dared challenge her. The battle raged with overwhelming intensity as explosions shook the mountains and the skies filled with burning fragments of shattered ships, yet Erelindra pushed deeper into the enemy ranks, determined to reach the heart of the Fallen Armada and destroy its commander. She confronted the towering Titan mech that guarded the path to the flagship, a monstrous creation fueled by corrupted star cores and wrapped in armor thicker than fortress walls, but Erelindra charged fearlessly, her starfire blade carving through its limbs in sparks of molten metal. The Titan mech collapsed, but more machines swarmed to replace it. However, Erelindra's rage blazed brighter than their artificial strength, because she fought not for glory but for every child, every elder, every dreamer who still believed in her. She raised her hand and summoned the ancient echo spirits of her ancestors, who rose from the dust as shimmering silhouettes wielding phantom weapons shaped from pure will, and they fought beside her, forming an unstoppable force that shook the Armada's confidence for the first time. The commander of the Fallen Armada finally revealed himself, emerging from the flagship in armor forged from void steel with glowing purple scars of dark power across his face, and he declared that Erelindra's resistance was meaningless because the stars had already chosen their conqueror. Erelindra stepped forward with cold fire in her eyes, telling him that no conqueror can defeat a queen who carries the hopes of millions, and that she would carve a new destiny with her own hand even if the universe itself tried to stop her. The commander blasted her with a wave of crushing dark energy, but Erelindra anchored her feet into the ground, letting her ancient runes absorb the force until the earth groaned beneath her, yet she pushed forward, raising her blade, glowing brighter than any star in sight. Their clash erupted in a storm of fire and shadows as their energies collided, sending shockwaves across the battlefield, knocking warriors from their feet and splitting the ridge in massive fractures that glowed like rivers of molten light. Erlindra struck first, carving a blazing arc across the commander's void steel armor, but he retaliated with a brutal strike of dark force that hurled her across the battlefield, yet she landed on her knees, refusing to surrender even for a heartbeat. The commander taunted her, promising that her world would be consumed and her people enslaved, but Erlindra rose again with fury that burned away her pain, and she declared that no force, no darkness, no empire would ever break her or claim her people. Her final surge of power erupted from deep within her heart, releasing a beam of starfire that tore through the sky and crashed into the commander, shattering his armor and sending him flying into the burning wreckage of his own flagship. The warriors of the Fallen Armada faltered as they saw their leader fall, and Erlindra seized a moment, raising her blade as she shouted for her soldiers to strike with the strength of their ancestors. The warriors charged with renewed fury as Erlindra led them down the fractured ridge, her starfire blade cutting a radiant path, while the remaining forces of the Fallen Armada scrambled in disarray, unable to decide whether to flee or to continue a battle they now knew they could no longer win. The ground trembled beneath the weight of their march as the Queen and her soldiers pushed forward, their armor glowing with a reflection of burning war machines and shattered sky fighters that fell from the clouds like dying meteors, marking the end of the Armada's dominance. Erlindra sensed the weakening morale of the enemy, and she drove her blade into the earth, unleashing a shockwave of golden energy that surged across the battlefield, knocking mechanical beasts off balance and scattering soldier drones in a brilliant cascade of broken parts. Her warriors shouted in triumph as they advanced behind the spreading light, knowing that this moment was more than a turning point, because it was a reclaiming of their world's heart from the corruption that had threatened to silence it forever. The remaining captains of the Fallen Armada gathered at the base of their flagship in a desperate attempt to mount a final defense, their armored frames humming with unstable energy as they prepared an attack meant to kill the Queen even if it cost them their lives. Erlindra saw them forming their last line, and she walked toward them without hesitation, her steps slow and deliberate, her presence a blazing symbol of defiance that caused even machines crafted without emotion to falter in their programmed resolve. She lifted her blade and addressed them with unwavering strength, telling them that surrender would grant them a place in the rebuilding of the galaxy, but resistance would ensure their destruction, because the hour of reckoning had arrived and no shadow could overpower the rising dawn. The captains ignored her warning and released a barrage of concentrated dark beams that twisted the air around them in spirals of violent destruction, but Erlindra raised her free hand and activated the ancient sigils embedded in her armor, creating a dome of shimmering gold that absorbed every strike. The impact sent ripples across the battlefield, yet Erlindra stood unmoved inside the protective sphere, which pulsed like a heart of living light fueled by her unbreakable would protect her people from the cruelty of the invaders. She stepped out of the dome with purposeful calm, her blade igniting with intensified starfire as she launched forward with a speed that blurred her figure, tearing through the first captain's armor and releasing a burst of fading purple mist as the machine collapsed. The second captain attempted to counter with a vortex cannon, but Erlindra dodged the strike and drove her blade through its course, severing the energy lines that held the creature together while the battlefield erupted in sparks and collapsing metal. The third captain lunged with a blade of its own forged from void stone, but Erlindra caught the weapon against a starfire edge, and with a powerful twist she shattered it before delivering a decisive strike that sent the captain crashing into the burning ground. With their final defenders defeated, the Fallen Armada's remaining troops fractured into panic-scattering units who retreated toward the outer perimeter of the battlefield, where they hastily prepared evacuation pods, hoping to escape before the Queen's forces closed in. Erlindra raised a hand, signaling her archers to fire, and a storm of radiant bolts soared across the sky, hitting the escape pods and crippling them so they crashed harmlessly into the dust, leaving the enemy cornered and drained of options. She walked forward through the smoke-filled air, taking in the sight of the towering flagship, whose engines flickered with weakening power as if the vessel itself understood that the battle was lost and it too was awaiting its final judgment. The flagship's inner chambers glowed faintly, a corrupted energy bled through its broken hull, filling the air with a low, ominous hum that sent vibrations across the battlefield like the warning heartbeat of a dying beast clinging to its last threads of life. Erlinda ascended the shattered exterior ramp leading to the main entrance of the flagship, her armor gleaming under the swirling dust clouds while fragments of fallen machines crunched beneath her feet, marking a path built upon sacrifice and unwavering resolve. Her general called out to follow her, but she raised her hand and ordered them to remain behind because this final confrontation was not meant to be shared, since the commander of the Armada had risen again, fueled by dark power and waiting for her deep inside. The warriors bowed in solemn respect as Erlinda entered the flagship alone, stepping into a corridor filled with flickering red lights and echoes of distant explosions, while the air thickened with the tension of ancient forces clashing for dominion over the galaxy. The path ahead narrowed into a long hall where the walls were engraved with the history of the Fallen Armada, showing their rise from forgotten corner of space and their ruthless conquest of countless worlds that had screamed beneath their merciless reign. Erlinda moved forward with calm strength, her blade humming softly as if whispering to her that this battle would define the fate of not only her people but also every realm that sought freedom from oppression and endless war. At last she reached the central chamber, a vast circular arena illuminated by swirling streams of purple and gold energy, where the commander awaited her standing with armor broken, yet gaze fierce-filled with hatred sharpened by defeat. The commander taunted her, saying that destroying him would not save the galaxy because the darkness behind the Armada was far greater and unstoppable, yet Erlinda replied that no darkness could conquer a heart determined to protect those it loved. They stepped toward each other, their energies clashing before their blades even met, sending sparks across the chamber, as if the universe itself held its breath, waiting to witness which force would shape the future. Erlinda charged forward, and their blades collided in a burst of starfire and void energy, creating shockwaves that cracked the chamber floor and fractured the towering pillars that lined the walls as their duel escalated into a storm of relentless assaults. The commander unleashed a surge of dark force that engulfed the chamber in swirling shadows, yet Erlinda cut through the darkness with radiant arcs of light, each strike forged from her unyielding devotion to her people and her oath as a queen. Their battle raged in a tempest of blazing fury and trembling echoes as Erlinda pushed the commander back step by step, her blade striking with a precision born from years of hardship, sacrifice, and leadership grounded in love rather than power. Finally, she summoned every last ounce of strength deep within her heart, releasing a beam of pure starfire that illuminated the entire chamber, revealing the face of a queen who refused to submit even to the most overwhelming force. The beam struck the commander directly, burning through the remnants of his void steel armor and shattering his core, while a deafening wave of golden light consumed the chamber and shook the entire flagship. When the light faded, the commander lay defeated, his corrupted power leaking into the floor, while Erlinda stood tall, breathing heavily yet unbroken as the glow of her blade dimmed gently in her hand.